Hello, my keto community. My name is Sarah, Pearls of Wisdom and Food with Keto Under 20. Yes, every day we love our Keto Under 20. Are you an older woman? Maybe an older man, but are you an older woman? Did you have the same journey that I had where it was like, I'll never forget. It's like, okay, so you're in your 20s and you always think that there's plenty of time, right? And then, well, in my 20s, my late 20s and my early 30s, I had my two sons. So when you're in that groove, like Keto Chaos was saying the other day, she had 22 years of being pregnant or nursing. And so you've got all this time that you think you've got later to work on the weight. Plus, how many of us nursed knowing that, oh, the baby, it's taking so many calories, I'm going to get my snapping body back. Well, I didn't have a snapping body to get back. I had already a lumpy body, grumpy head from all the bad foods that I was eating or poor choices of foods that I was eating. I worked in a pizza place from 21 to 28. Do I have to tell you about the pizzas and grinders, which subs, heroes that we had? And we had Peggy Lawton cookies. We could drink whatever we wanted to. I'm surprised I didn't weigh a lot more than I weighed, except I guess I was probably more active because I was a waitress. I don't know. But yeah, my 20s were spent along with the other waitresses that I worked with, drinking and coming up with combos of pizzas and grinders that we could overeat every day, every night. I mean, to eat a pizza at 1 in the morning was nothing. And before I got the job there, when I was under 21 and drinking, it was off to the diner we went for home fries or off for Chinese food we went at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's amazing what a young metabolism can do for you where you're not paying the piper. And, we all know how the piper gets paid later. Each year or decade, our metabolism slows down, slows down, slows down. And some of us learn early on that certain foods, how do I put this? Well, what I was going to say is that if we would find certain food plans that would help us to lose weight, perhaps. Some of us smoked because it kept off weight, because it was easier to reach for a cigarette and a cup of coffee, or a cigarette and a drink, rather than a drink with a bag of salted peanuts, or a drink, coffee and dessert, all of those sort of things. So that was, for a lot of us older women or women that came from that era, that was our solution, cigarettes. And then what happened? Well, we quit smoking because there was enough evidence that made us go, maybe it's not a good idea after all. And so we quit after we did the low nicotine, the cutting back thing, right? Yeah, like reduced fat in the salad dressings. How we get to where we are today, isn't it amazing? And so we gave up the cigarettes only to find out that the cigarettes are cured in sugar. Yes. So that's why a lot of people gain weight. So we start sucking on hard candy, or just, having more sugar without even realizing that we are naturally being drawn to the sugar, because we are now addicted to the sugar because it was in the cigarettes. Amazing, isn't it? And so there we are. And we end up, for me, I came out of the baby making phase and the nursing phase. So there I am, 32, no longer having babies, no longer breastfeeding, and I'm left with just me. And of course, I'm not thinking at that point, oh, here I am. I can go and just, lose all that weight now because, that's what I promised myself after I stopped having babies and nursing, that I could get level And I wasn't on birth control pills because we all know that we gained some weight with the birth control pills. Why wouldn't we? I mean, look at those hormones that we were inviting and taking and digesting, and we were such guinea pigs back then. I remember when I went on birth control pills at 20 years old with my first marriage. And there wasn't any evidence out about what, and that's almost 50 years ago. There was no evidence about the dangers of birth control pills or the hormones used in them. It was just a way to not get pregnant. Yeah. So, there I am at 32. Now I had already entered Overeaters Anonymous. So although my choices of food and my alcohol intake was still quite leading the pack, I wasn't paying attention to how much I ate or the items that I ate, but I wasn't eating standing up, and I was using a smaller plate and a smaller fork and a smaller spoon while I ate all the standard American diet items. A little spoon for the cereal, a little fork for the dessert at a restaurant. Yeah, I was doing standard American diet with Overeaters Anonymous tools. Kind of funny when you think about it, but it takes what it takes to get here. And so the Overeaters Anonymous food plan, when I entered into it, I was 25, 26. So I hadn't had my babies yet, which is funny. But I went there because I could not stop eating. I could not stop eating. I was the poster child for compulsive overeating. And I would go there, and there's a lot of odd sorts that go to kind of like the spin-offs of Alcoholics Anonymous. So in Overeaters Anonymous, at that time, there were even skinny women that could not stop eating, and perhaps they had disorders that took care of gaining weight, like bulimia or anorexia. And so I would go to these meetings, and I held on tightly to them, but their food plans were the orange sheet and the gray sheet, and they were about as stark could be. And because it was Overeaters Anonymous, it was about stopping the overeating, of course. And so I don't think we were really saying addiction back then. I think we were just saying compulsive overeating. And there were many ways that somebody in that group would identify themselves: a food addict, a compulsive overeater, a food disorder person. And so awareness is always what would bring me to not necessarily the next level, but the next place in my journey, because there's a lot of lefts, rights, and setbacks when we're dealing with our food issues, right? And I remember working in offices, how competitive, oh my goodness, that was so competitive with other women. And a lot of them did tops, a lot of them did Weight Watchers. And I always felt Weight Watchers, well, that'll be it. That'll be the last door on the left for me. If I get that bad, I'll go to Weight Watchers. Those are the little lies I used to tell myself, because I thought I could do it on my own with my OA tools and toolkit, right? And so, the behavior part. And so I think a lot of my weight issues were related to if I could still snag a guy. Truth be told. If a man was still finding me attractive at the weight that I was at, well, maybe there was no need to do anything else. And I remember I dated one man, and it was probably, I got sober in 86, so this was probably the early 80s. And I remember that I had an exercise salon, and it was called the Sweat Shop. And I would teach 2 to 3 1-hour, kind of like calisthenics, Joni Greggins, if you remember her from TV or not. So it was kind of like, exercise of calisthenics and, squat thrusts and bend over and holding onto vegetable cans to do things. And and I put together my own music. I would record so piecemeal together compared to today's technology. But I would put together my little 1 hour. I'd change it every week. It would be a new routine: stomach, legs, thighs, hips, and I can still hear like George Thorogood singing "Bad to the Bone" and remember what exercise routine I put to it. A lot of Madonna. It was great exercise beats to it. And I did that and I lost 40 pounds, and I was dating somebody that didn't like me smaller, so he stopped dating me. Isn't that amazing? Because he liked heftier women. And so it was just very, very interesting back then. And my motivation, I was going through a pretty horrific divorce. And so I had the divorce diet, which helped, which was probably the 40 pounds, having this exercise salon. And as you know, weight or size of your body is 80 or 90% food, 10% exercise. So you can't out exercise what your weight is, no matter what. No matter what Julian, what is her name, you know, Biggest Loser lady is. And so, yeah, so I was probably weighing in, I was solid. I was probably 170 solid. Things weren't jiggling yet because I was in my mid 30s. And those were the days. Things weren't even jiggling. Can you imagine? And I see it today. When I worked at the shelter, I would see it in the obese women that they were, they had lots of hard fat on their body. They didn't jiggle. And wait till you get older. And so now, of course, at 67, I've got a lot of hanging, jiggling stuff, which is basically the skin. And so the journey is just so interesting with how we get here, And my last door on the left, I thought was going to be Weight Watchers. And so about 4 or 5 years ago now, I did join Weight Watchers. I was sitting in an AA meeting. There was a woman I would consider my peer, same age, same size, that I would see. I was facing her. She was facing this way, and I was facing her. And she would lean back and put her hands on her midriff, maybe like a pregnant woman would. I mean, almost in this way that like was highlighting it, like this is mine. And of course, I'm sure she wasn't doing that because it's a menopause, not a baby. But I was looking, and it was spring, and I loved my starchy shirts with my belts with khakis. That was like my office warm weather outfit, maybe with a blazer, a little polish, pearls. And I couldn't wear the belts anymore because you can't wear a belt with midriff. It was, it was just kind of weird. And so I was looking at her and I was saying, that's me. That is what I look like. And no wonder I can't wear a belt anymore. The midriff is going further out than the boobs, especially when sitting. And so it was like that vanity moment, it's like, I can't do this anymore. And so it's funny the steps that you take to do it. So I looked up where Weight Watchers was being held and what times it was being held. And, so I hadn't pulled the trigger yet. But after seeing that and then realizing, no, I just can't. I just can't. I've spent thousands of dollars as a woman with clothes and belts and outfits, and I'm not going up a size or two just to make it work. Plus, that whole style, you can't wear a belt with a menopause. And so it's like, I don't want to step out of that style. I think that was the driving force. And then seeing it on her and seeing her unconscious hands on her menopause. This is just me. Sorry if I'm offending anybody. And so I found out when Weight Watchers was, where it was. And so it was held on Saturdays at 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. And I said, perfect. At that point, I was going to 2 AA meetings on Saturday mornings because 2 different flavors. And then the second one got over at 9:30. And I said, perfect. I'm going to go to the 10 o'clock and sign up. And my Saturday mornings will be given over to my alcoholism and my weight issues, right? And so at 7:30 is the first meeting I would go to. And by 7:45, I was jumping out of my skin. I said, no way can I wait until 10 o'clock. I'm going to the 8 o'clock meeting. And that's what I did. I left AA and I went to this 8 o'clock meeting. And it was the only Weight Watcher face-to-face meeting that I went to. And I signed up for both online and the meetings. And it was like $44 or something a month. And I got all the information and they weighed me in. And that was the last meeting I went to. I went home and I said, $44 a month times 12? I'm going to spend $500 on this? I can do this online because I have done it online and I have done it with calorie counting. And I had been on Spark People before counting my own calories. So I contacted Weight Watchers and stopped the face-to-face meetings. So my cost was, I think, $19.95 or $9 per month. And I began to do the tracker and I joined Weight Watcher Facebook groups. And that's how I began. And I was happy as could be for 18 months until the stall. And then I realized this is as far as I'm going with Weight Watchers. I'm in my early 60s, and there's something about having a modified, smaller, standard American diet that's just stopped. And I realized that by feeding myself carbs and sugars, I was still keeping the pilot light going with my addictions. I was still keeping the weight at that insulin resistant probably stage. That's probably where I was. I had had enough. This is as far as you're going to go. And then I began the low carb, high fat. So I guess this started off as, are you an older woman like me? And it ended up with a little bit of my journey. So I will title that as such, a little bit of a journey to my low carb, high fat lifestyle that took me for the next 18 months until keto. So thanks so much for watching. This has been Sarah, Pearls of Wisdom and Food with Keto Under 20 now, but it wasn't always that way. Bye-bye for now.